And there we are. I believe we are live. Let's see here. Yep, it is true. Oh, let me get this on here real quick, and then we will get started. I know this is very unprofessional the way I do things here, folks, but I always like to make sure I've got everything all lined up. Yep, there it is. So we are good to go. We are live. Welcome, folks, to a very unorganized, very kind of on-the-fly episode of Tank Talk Live. Very excited tonight because I found a guest to come on with me. Literally 10 minutes ago, we made the decision to do this. So really happy about that. Corey from Aquarium Co-op is back with me today. No, he's not scared of me, folks. He's here and ready to go. So Corey, let's give you an opportunity to say something. This is going to become, I think, more of a regular thing having you on here. So give you an opportunity. Say hello, say whatever you want to say.
Well, if you don't know who I am, Corey from Aquarium Co-op, and I'm pretty much always down to talk fish unless I'm physically at my store or shooting another video. So when John says, "Oh man, I don't have a guest," and I go, "Well, I'm free. Let me shovel some food into my mouth, and then I'm good to go." And so here I am, and hopefully we'll talk about something I know. So,
well, I do have a topic that you and I decided on 20 seconds ago, and I changed the title. We do have something that I want to spend a little time talking about today. It is not anything to do with YouTube or anything like that. I'm going to behave myself, I promise. I want to talk about breeding fish. And unless you've got anything new going on that you'd like to announce, I do have a couple quick things that I'd like to mention. But do you have, you got anything you want to announce? You know, anything going on?
The only thing I've got new that's going on, I've added a couple more plants to the website, and that's just slowly diversifying a little bit because I've been shooting the series of one tank at a time where I set up an aquarium and I show you exactly how I'm doing it. And some of these aquariums I'm setting up, I'm using plants that everyone goes, "That's great," except there's nowhere to buy it. And so I said, well, all right, I'm putting them online, and you know, they come with disclaimers, like some of them are going to melt during shipping and stuff like that. But you know, that's all I've got new besides training new employees at the store and trying to make more time to make more things happen. And then the last thing, my latest video from yesterday is pretty much going viral where, you know, it's a fish room tour. This guy's got 2,800 gallons of water, but only 6 fish tanks. So his biggest tank's 1,000 gallons, and it's pretty cool to see some of those Central and South Americans in huge tanks. So you should check that out if you guys haven't. It's on my channel, but that's all I got to say.
I did see it, and that was a beautiful, beautiful video. That guy, I'd never heard of that guy before, and what an amazing fish room he has. I mean, I commented on the video. I said, every fish keeper's dream. I mean, because it's true. That is an absolute perfect scenario. I'd hate to be the one that has to do all that work, though. But wanted to mention, Corey, I don't know if you noticed this while you were talking. Something happened with my video there. I wasn't pushing buttons. I don't know what happened. I think it was just some kind of, I don't know, weird YouTube thing.
I saw it happen, but you know, luckily I'm pretty enough for the both of us. So if you drop out, I'll just go full, you know, talking, and it'll fixate on me till you come back.
Absolutely. You are a beautiful man. We all know that. Now, okay, I just ate dinner. You know, here we go. There was orientation tonight. We got one starting first year in middle school this year and one starting first year in high school this year. So tonight's just been an absolute crazy night. But that's not what this is about. I do have one thing to update people on, and that is this right here. You and I, Corey, have talked about this a little bit. I don't know how happy you are about what's happening here, but if you're watching this right now and you have not had a chance to watch my video that I uploaded on Thursday, doing a complete overhaul, complete restart, complete reboot, whatever you want to call it, on this tank right here. I'm not going to go into big details because I did in that video, but bottom line is I was having way too many problems. Corey's beautiful plants, gosh, that just got sent to me, we're starting to really have some problems. The fish were having problems. I said, you know what, that's it. I'm done with it. We're going to completely start over again. The tank it's kind of on hold right now. And this is the update on it. I think I have a new filter. I'm going to get a new filter for this. I don't think that the old filter is a problem, but it's kind of a long story, but I think I'm going to go with a new filter for this. And so it's been put on hold a little bit so that I can get all that straight. But there's still going to be videos. I'm going to be uploading a video this Sunday about this tank. We'll just have to do it a little bit differently than what I expected, because I was going to do the tank or the filter kind of rebuild on this week's video, but we're going to change it. We're going to do something different this week. So there you go. There is the update on that. Everybody is, Kevin's saying I need to drink some Coke. I will, don't worry. The beautiful thing about when you have a guest on is that I can take drinks of my caffeine-free Coca-Cola every time Corey's talking. But there's probably going to be people in here. I think I've already seen a couple people comment on it. They're probably going to ask about the big announcement that I made on Tuesday about the KGTropicals fish food. I'm not going to spend the whole live stream tonight talking about that. I don't want my presence online to just be one big, huge advertisement. But it is true, folks. Lisa and I have launched our own line of cichlid pellets. If you want more information on that, just head over to KGTropicals.com. It's very simple. And go to the shop page, and you'll see it right there. I'm going to be putting up a whole lot more technical stuff about the food and stuff like that shortly. By this weekend, it's going to go up there. But it's on there. And so if you want to know more information on this food that you see sitting here right now, go over there, check that out. It's ready to order. We got plenty of it in stock. And I've had so many people order it already just from the announcement on Facebook, and it's overwhelming. So really excited about that. I'm excited about other people's excitement about it. So I'm thrilled. That's it, though. I don't want to talk any more about it. Somebody asked, are we going to have community food? Yes, we will. It should be within the next month. We'll have it. But right now, we do not. So thank you to everybody that's ordered already. Thank you to anybody who's thinking about ordering. Give it a shot. It's good food, and your cichlids will absolutely like it. So that's it. I already said I'm not talking about it anymore. So no more questions about it. If you want information about it, go to KGTropicals.com. Check it out. If you're in the Tank Talk group, you can private message me there and ask me anything you want about it. So there we go. So that is all over with. Those are the only updates that I have. This has been slown a little bit. It's okay, though, because the fish are fine in there. And, they'll be good.
That shows you how unscripted that tank is, because, you always say, treat it like I'm a customer in your store. And so in my mind, I'm face palming right now going, all right, yeah, that's like a customer. Let's tear it down. And, I realize we're tearing it down for, some discus problems, not really the plant problems, but, I'm just doing one of those like, okay, we're going to make this harder on ourselves. Totally can still get through it, but it's going to be one of those customers. But yeah, we'll get through it.
I mean, I knew you were not going to be happy about it. I mean, because you are the guy that wants to solve those problems, and you would rather fix the problem than scratch it and start over again. And I respect that about you, but I had to do it and then tell you.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's just like if you're walking to my store, it happens all the time where people just like, they do something, you're like, and I always approach it this way with anything is, given these set of parameters, here's where we're going to go from here. Because that's all you can really do is like, whether someone tells me like, I've only got a fish bowl and I'm going to keep 10 Oscars in it and I'm going to do it and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I then will go, well, here's the best possible advice for this train wreck that's about to happen. And the same thing. Okay, we're going to redo an entire tank. We can use it to do some things, like maybe we even put substrate in there or something like that. My job might get easier down the road, but that being said, we're here to talk about fish breeding and not plant stuff. So,
well, yeah, but if there were people that had not seen my video on Sunday, they would be like, what's going on there? So I wanted to address it.
Sure.
And I also want to say one other thing. This was only a couple of people that said this. There were a couple of people that brought up the theory of maybe something was wrong with the plants. I'm not saying this because you are on here with me. I'm saying it because it's absolute fact and it's the truth. This problem is something that I was dealing with long before those plants went in there. So I am 100% confident without a doubt that it is not the plants that caused the problem. Unfortunately, it's the plants that also, along with the fish, suffered from the problem. And I probably lost all of the money that I put into that. but you know, we'll reboot and we'll start over, and it'll be better because of it. So there you go. So let's talk about breeding fish, because it's a topic that you and I can both talk very fluently on. Particular fish for me. You, I think, are much more well versed in live bearer breeding. If I'm
I
correct?
definitely have done lots of that. Yeah, I've done lots of live bearers. I've done lots of Mabuna and tangs. I would say mostly I breed all the easy fish, and that, to me, that is things that aren't egg scatters, like tetras, barbs, danios. You know, I can do some of that stuff, but I find it to be so labor intensive to raise up rainbow fish and stuff like that, that the work to outcome ratio is off the chart. And I go, I'd rather buy it. I'll go mow my neighbor's lawn, make some money, and buy that fish, as opposed to spend the next year slaving away to make 4 of them. So
I hear you. I want to, even though we're just getting started with it, I want to mention something real quick. There is somebody that commented in the comment section. His name is Mike Angel. He said, "Hey, what's up, Corey and John? How you guys doing? I want to respond to this guy by saying I am very frantic. I'm exhausted, but I am very good, Mike. And the reason why I'm doing that is because that dude right there comments on every single one of my videos, and it is the most overwhelmingly positive comments that I've ever heard from anybody. Every single time he does it, I think he's even gone over and commented on videos on my other channel. The dude is just full of positivity, and I love that. And so I think he deserves for me to say hello back to him today. So, okay, breeding. Here's the number one question. Okay, we're doing this off the cuff here, folks. We're playing Q&A between us. And just understand, folks, we will get to your questions. If you have questions for Corey or myself, send them in now, because I've got mods in here. There goes my video again. Hopefully you can still hear me. I've got mods in here that are going to feed us with questions. So if you have your questions now, put them in. I might not answer them right away, or Corey might not answer them right away, but we will get to them in a second. I wish I knew what was going on with my video, and I wish I knew if people could hear me while this is happening.
I can hear you and see you currently, so it's working on my end at least. So
okay, well, all right. So let me go with. Okay, somebody just said we can hear you. That's good. All right, so I'm just gonna work through it here, and hopefully the video comes back on. I don't know. Let me kind of reset the camera here. All right, we'll see what that does. All right. Finally, the number one question. What is the first piece of advice? Okay, now you have 2 different types of people that come into your shop when it comes to breeding. They come in and they either say, my fish just bred and I don't know what to do, so help me with that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I want you to answer the question, and then I'll answer the question. Somebody comes into your store and says, I want to breed fish. I want to take the hobby to the next level. I want to breed fish, not really any particular type of fish. What is your first piece of advice that you would give somebody that just brings the generic question of, I want to breed fish because I think it would be fun?
So the way I answer that is, why do we want to breed fish? And, you know, I want to make sure that people aren't wanting to do it for money, because they're usually in for a very rude awakening. And if they say, well, I think it'll be fun, or my kids are going to love it, I go, great, let's do this. It is a blast. And, you know, my first piece of advice is, you know, a watch pot never boils. So get yourself some breeding projects, if you will, and just let those fish be fish and enjoy them, instead of, you know, killing them with kindness. So often I watch people get really into breeding a fish, and they go buy their, let's say, pair or trio, and usually they're not buying like a group of 10 or 12 like I would normally recommend, and then, so they get it home, it's there, a week later it hasn't bred yet, they come back in, what should I do? They're not breeding yet. Should I get this food? Well, yeah, that food wouldn't hurt. And another week, and they still haven't bred, and they're, well, I'm doing a water change every single day, and I'm doing all these things. And they're so laser focused on that one thing that I actually believe fish won't breed when you harass them all the time. And we think that changing water is good. We think that overfeeding them is good. We're going to up the temperature. We're going to do all these things to encourage breeding. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, whoa, just get off me. Let me settle down. I've been in your tank for, a cool 11 days at this point. Maybe I'm not a factory of babies yet.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it makes total sense. My first question back to a person would be, and I think you might have said this too, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for fun, or are you doing it to sell fish? But my next piece of advice, I've said this on like 10 live streams, my next piece of advice is the same, no matter how that question is answered, and that is breed a fish. You might disagree with me, Corey. Breed a fish that's easy to get rid of. And the reason why I say that, like the guy in your video last night, Dovai, I don't think Dovai would be a difficult fish to get rid of, except for the fact that they breed so many. They have so many fry. The broods are huge. And so a guy like that has an active, large, adult, mature breeding pair could, like he said in the video, have thousands and thousands of fry. What are you going to do if you can't get rid of those fry? That's one of the biggest things that I tell people to think about. Whether you're talking about live bearers, you want to do a beta breeding project. I think everybody who's a fish keeper has gone through the phase of, I want to breed betas because they're so challenging. Whether you want to breed guppies or African cichlids, whatever it is, understand that if you are successful, you're going to have a ridiculous amount of fry to get rid of. Unless maybe you're breeding stingrays who have 1 or 2 pups at a time. But if you're breeding anything that is a egg layer, mouth brooder, it doesn't matter. You prepare to have a lot of fry. You need to be prepared to not only care for those fry and raise them up, but also get rid of them. Because if you have 1,000 fish in your garage or in your basement and you can't get rid of them, you're going to hate the fact that you decided to breed anything. I mean, that would be the first thing
to everyone, I think. And that's the one, I've got a whole series of like 6 videos on breeding fish for profit. And I'm convinced there might not be a single fish out there that won't oversaturate a local market. When I say a local market, I mean like your state. I've watched even lots of stingray breeders saturate their market because they get 2 or 3 breeding pairs going. And they're cranking out 1 to 4 pups every 3 months, let's say. And so let's just say that averages 12 stingrays a year. That being said, after like a year and a half, most of the people that want to buy, let's say, a Matoro stingray or something like that have bought them. Because you're also competing with the prices of like, oh, well, Matoros can still come in from Florida and stuff like that. And so even though you made and sold 12, overall, the state might have sold 22 of them. But then the following year, you're still trying to unload your pups, and you might only be able to unload 7. So now you're going, okay, well, I've got some more breeders. Okay, so now I'm up to 4 breeding pairs. And year number 3, you can still only move 6 or 7 pups, but you produce 20 pups now. And so even on stuff like that, and even some of the rare plecos that don't produce very many, if you're doing it correctly, like John said, and this is assumed that you want to be successful and do it correct, you will overpopulate on any breed out there except for very few. And there's a few that have unlimited consumption. And for me, that is feeder goldfish, that is feeder white clouds, feeder guppies, anything that's going to be used as a feeder item. The problem is you get somewhere between 6 and 7 cents for them, maybe. And, then they're going to sell them for 7 or 8 cents. And so there's pennies. But that's why some of the biggest markets in the world are revolving around feeders, because there's unlimited consumption where you're a great pair of discus. There is a very finite number you're going to be able to sell.
No, that's very true. And on the topic of selling, again, you alluded to it. You get overrun with fish if you can't sell them. I lost my total train of thought because I read a comment, and it wasn't a bad comment. It was a good one. I don't know what I was going to say.
Well,
it's a shame that we can't edit.
Getting overrun with fish is problematic on a lot of things. And so like on my channel, if you guys are watching me, you probably notice like, why does this guy have like 3 different species of turtles now? He's a fish guy. Well, in my opinion, most breeders that are really serious or really starting to crank out fry need stuff to cull fish. And I personally don't like to use fish to do that. So like, let's say I had a big doveye. I don't want to feed fish to that doveye all the time, even for my own fish room, because if there's any illness or anything like that, possibly I'm going to pass it on, where it's very unlikely I'd pass anything on to a turtle. But I still need, like, oh, that guy's looking a little sickly. He needs to leave. And maybe I'm not a guy that can just be like, watch this. I just pinched his head and killed him. I have to be like, well, nature's going to take its course over there. And, that's the way I can sleep at night going, well, that turtle ate it and got a good meal. I don't have to feel horrible about killing it. And so you need a good source. And yeah, some people use, oh, I've got that Oscar in the corner. I've got a red-tailed catfish. I've got whatever. But for me, I use a reptile to do it just so that I'm really minimizing passing around anything.
No, that's good advice. I mean, I'm not I'm not a particular fan of live foods because of that reason. But again, like I think you alluded to, if you're breeding your own feeders, then that's fine. Or if you have an excess of fry and you need to thin out the herd and you use them as feeders, then you as long as everything is copacetic in your system, you should be fine. But no, I agree. I mean, regardless of if you bred them or not, I don't like feeding live foods, and it's not because it's mean. It's just because, I don't know, I just don't see anything out of it. I'm 42. I'm not 19 anymore. I used to be entertained by it then, but certainly not anymore. So, but I've even gone to the point of telling people the first thing that you should plan is getting rid of the fry, talking to your local pet store, going down to your shop. Hey, I'm thinking about breeding yellow labs. I know those are a big seller. If I was to bring you a bag of them, will you take them? Will you give me a free can of fish food or something for them? That is a big step, because if you know how you're going to get rid of the fry, then you'll never have this problem. And don't just think, I'll put an ad on Craigslist and they'll all sell in 2 days. No, it doesn't work that way. And believe me, if your idea is, well, if I have too many, I'll just sell them online. You know just as well as I do, Corey, how much of a headache selling fish online can be. So let's well, shipping fish. Selling fish online is easy, but shipping fish online is the hard part. Let's move on and let's talk about like a breeding setup. In order to do that, we're going to have to talk about what kind of fish that we're going to breed. So you get to pick the fish. All right, we're going to do a breeding fish. You get to pick the fish.
Let me think of. I'm going to pick not necessarily something that's profitable or anyone's specialty. I'm going to think of something that we want to breed. That way we'll have to design a tank around it. I'm trying to think, what do I want to breed? I want to breed something I've never bred. And so this will be good because I'm not exactly sure the best way to do it, and you might not either. I want to breed whiptail catfish. So they're sometimes called a whiptail pleco. They're long and skinny. They have a sucker mouth. And I've never bred them before. I do know they're from the Amazon. I know some, parameters, stuff like that. And I've watched some talks on how to do it. But being that I've never done it, it's only guessing, like, here's how I would try and make this tank, I think.
So you had to pick a fish that I know nothing about.
Right. That's what makes it hard and difficult. So you can get your own line of thinking of, like, clearly some things are always going to be true, like, bigger is going to be better in terms of water quality and things like that. But I think most people watching maybe don't know how they're going to breed a certain fish, and so this is the line of logic. Instead of me just going, we're going to do A plus B plus C and then we're going to get the result, I like to think of, like, well, all right, so this thing's a sucker mouth catfish. Okay, so I probably don't want anything in there that's going to be able to eat the food away from it. So if I've got, let's say an Oscar in there, any food I drop in is never going to make it to these plecos. So, like, that's a problem right there. So you start designing a tank on very general terms. And I find when I do this all the time and I exercise my brain that way, I can start applying that way of thinking to other types of fish. And even though I don't necessarily know how to breed it, I can go, well, this fish behaves like that, so I think this might work. So knowing that it's a catfish, I would think, without doing any research, it probably would prefer dimmer lighting. just because catfish do. They don't like to be in the bright light. So, you know, that might be the first thing, is use dim lighting or no lighting at all, you know, but there's challenges even there too, where like, oh, no lighting, what happens when it's sick? Oh, I didn't notice it died. Like that's a bad thing too. So, you know, but what tank would you choose? You know, so let's say, and when I say whiptail catfish, there's a lot of varieties. There's some that are going to be as small as, let's say, 4 inches, and maybe some as long as a foot. But if you were going to set up a breeding project, what tank would you use right now? You know, and you've bred fish in the past, and you know what sizes you like, probably.
I do, absolutely, but I don't have a clue when it comes to the fish that you're talking about. I mean, I'm a believer in larger tanks as the breeder tanks, obviously. I mean, unless we're talking about things specific like discus, I mean, I totally understand why they use 20-gallon tanks for that. Things like that. If we were talking about plecos, you know, like small bristlenose plecos and the really high-end plecos, the gold nuggets and things like that, you don't have to have a huge tank. But this fish you're talking about, I don't even have a clue. I don't even have a clue what I would use. I mean, if you're talking about a fish that's 2, 3, 4 inches, and it's a catfish, a bottom-dwelling sucker-type catfish, I would go with something. I mean, one of my favorite tanks is the 33 longs, the 12 by 12 by 48.
Yeah, yeah.
I love those, particularly for that type of a fish that's, you know, 4 or 5 inches long, maybe a little bit bigger. You got plenty of room back and forth and side to side, and it's short enough to keep everything focused into a certain area. So I don't know anything about the fish you're talking about, but that's probably where I would go.
Well, we've got a parameter now. So let's say we want to use that 33 long. I can get on board with that. I think we can do, I think most fish, honestly, besides stuff that's clearly way too big, can be bred in a 33 long. I think that's a good thing. The thing I would go for next possibly might be knowing that it's a sucker catfish, you know, so not like a Corridora or something like that. It's got a sucker mouth. Typically, they don't mind having some wood in the tank. So I might have a piece of driftwood in there, whether they're going to eat on it or just hide or whatever. I feel like I would offer them some kind of shelter in there, and I'd put a piece of wood in personally.
Yeah, I mean, are these fish you're talking about? I mean, when I hear these small suckermouth catfish, I automatically think something similar to plecos. So I would think pleco caves type things, if they're going to be egg layers like plecos do, where the male is going to stay in there and kind of guard the brood. You know, my instincts would tell me, let's get some type of a vessel for them to be in. But maybe I'm wrong. You know better than me.
I think that's a valid strategy too. Like I would probably have both those because I like I said, I honestly don't know the way that they breed. Like I know generalities, but just because you know how something breeds doesn't mean they're going to choose it. Like all the time I've seen bristlenose use a piece of wood instead of the cave you put in there. So I'm just, in general, how would I set this tank up, you know? And so like, let's say we're throwing a piece of wood in there. Now we've got some pleco caves, which I think are good things to be putting in there. If I think it's going to want dim lighting, maybe we only light one side of the tank, you know? So like, let's say we use a T8 bulb, like whatever, just the random fixture we got laying around, and we put a 2-foot light on this 4-foot tank, put it on one side, and then they can choose how bright they want. If they go to this side, it's bright. On this side, it's dark. And we could learn a lot about that fish. Like, oh man, it never goes into the light. Maybe it doesn't like it. If it's always over there, we can learn about that too, you know? So I'm not sure what the correct setup is, but that's how I would start going about it.
Yeah, and then, well, what about filtration for this fish that neither one of us know anything about?
Okay, so filtration, I personally, like in my breeding room, use tons of sponge filters because they're cheap and effective and efficient. That being said, sometimes catfish like really strong flows. I don't know what this one wants, but I'd probably start with sponge filter because it's cheap and easy. And if I couldn't get them to breed, I would switch to something else possibly.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because we both completely agree on that. I love sponge filters for breeding tanks, mainly because you're right. Maybe they do like a lot of current, but I mean, I feel like whatever you're breeding, if it's egg laying, if it's a substrate egg layer or a vertical egg layer or whatever, the more current there is, the more potential there is for the whole thing to get messed up, because the eggs get blown around, and the parents are going to spend more time trying to gather the eggs and put them back than actually doing what's supposed to be done. So sponge filters, absolutely. I think that people who have bred fish before and had multiple tanks before, they know how good sponge filters are. But I think somebody who's never used anything but canister filters or hang on the back filters or a big sump or whatever, they look at it and they're like, there's no way that could be efficient. But they are. They're extraordinarily efficient. We had 200 tanks in our shop, and they were all on sponge filters, and we very rarely had any kind of problems. So sponge filters, absolutely the way to go. Easy to maintain. Like you said, they're cheap, easy to run, and it's not going to create that huge current in the tank that could actually hamper the breeding process. So yeah, we're on the same page there.
Let me try something here. I want to try screen sharing and see if I can show everyone the fish I'm talking about, so that way we can all get on the same page here. We'll see if I'm good enough to pull this off on someone else's stream, because I've never attempted it before, but we're going to try it here, and we're going to see if it will show. Let's see here. Let me flip to the right page. So hopefully, maybe you can tell me if you can see this whiptail catfish, but it's got long streamers, and there's lots of varieties. So like that one might be called the twig catfish, and then there's some of these dwarf varieties, and you can start seeing in the background, and this is kind of how I would do research, honestly, if I was looking to breed a fish. So like just from this picture on Google, we see small fish, different type of gravel, and then lots of mystery snails blurred out in the background. That to me says maybe it's in hard water right there, and that doesn't seem right. And then this is, I believe they call this one a royal. Yeah, so a royal whiptail catfish. It's got a higher dorsal fin on it. And, it's in a bare bottom tank there. But I think what it really wants is a dimmer lit tank. These are actually a very cool type of catfish. They're closer to the chameleon ones. But, here, I think this is planet catfish. Looks like they're breeding some right here. So there's those pleco caves you're talking about. I think this one's called the red lizard. I've got those in my store. This is one of those ones I was talking about that might only be 4 inches or so. And so you can see there's all these different setups, and I have no idea what the right setup is yet. But now we at least know the type of fish. In case you guys watching were like, I'm an African cichlid guy, I have no idea what it would look like. So, Well,
that's good. I'm glad you did that, and I didn't even think about doing that. So that's a big help. Now this, as fun as this is, talking about this, this is the point in the conversation when I had my shop that I would start to campaign the person who's asking me all these questions to not breed that fish. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I was in the business for 2 years. Okay, I focused most of my attention on African cichlids, but those are fish I've never had. I've never known them to be wildly popular. I'm sure there is a market for them. I'm sure there is. But there might be a problem if you are very successful in breeding that fish. If you're successful, if you do what you're trying to do, it might actually become a problem, because you're going to have tanks full of fish that nobody's ever heard of. And that kind of goes back to my point before of, yes, you've got these magnificent fish and you've conquered the world of breeding this kind of, obscure, hard to find, oddball type catfish. That's great. Pat on the back. Now what are you going to do? Now you got a house full of them. You know what I mean? So that I'm not trying to end this conversation.
No,
I'm just saying.
I agree. I just picked that fish because for me personally, I'm not always driven by money. So for instance, let's say I made red lizard catfish and I have no idea how many they make. Let's say they make 14 at a time and I crank out 14 a month. That's more than I can sell at my store. But sometimes I'll breed something like that to learn how does that breed, and then go, you know what? I might be able to apply some of those techniques to breeding, for instance, leopard frog plecos, where if I could spawn 15 of those a month, I would sell every one of them every time. And so a lot of times I'm just a glutton for punishment, and I love to breed things that either aren't well documented or that I've never done so that I can learn about it. And I love the exercise in doing something I don't know. If I can watch a tutorial on how to do guppies, which, yeah, I've got tutorials on that, that's something I can set up and replicate. But when there's only a couple websites that have even done it, then I feel like, okay, I could really learn a lot here because I'm not just going to follow what other people have done. And so I just picked that fish because I think everyone has seen a talk on how are we going to set up African cichlids? How are we going to breed convicts? How are we going to do this? I want to talk about something I've never done because that makes it interesting for me. And I have no idea. And maybe there's someone in the comments right now going, oh, that guy's a moron. You don't breed those things like that at all. And I would love to learn how to do it. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's, let me clear it up here. I'm not talking about the money side of things. When I say a fish that's easy to get rid of, I'm talking even if you have to give them away. I mean, it has nothing to do with money. I mean, we can have the money talk later. But for people, you know, I wasn't referring to, you know, you should breed a fish that you can make a lot of money off of. That's not what I meant by that. What I was saying was, like a fish like that, it might be really cool to learn that and to master that and to do it. And now you've got 300 of them. Now what are you going to do? You know what I mean? That's what I was saying about it. If it's fish that people don't know anything about, if you're breeding guppies, you know, you're going to have your hardcore guppy people that are going to be like, oh, I only, you know, it has to be this particular strain or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But most people that have guppies don't care what they are, what to combine to make it, or hybridized, whatever. They don't care about that stuff. They look at it, it's got a pretty yellow tail, they want it. So a project like that, you would never have a problem getting rid of 300 guppies. So that's kind of where I was going with that. It has nothing to do with the money side of it.
Sure.
You know, the money part of breeding fish is a whole nother conversation. I mean, and maybe we should kind of segue into that because I've seen, just peeking down at the comments, I've seen a couple of people mention something about money. I'm a guy, and then you're going to be a guy that comes into my store that I don't have anymore. But I'm a guy that comes into your store and says, all right, look, I got 30 tanks in my house, and I want to fill them all up with water. I want to put sponge filters in all of them, and I want to breed fish and make some part-time money. My fish hobby has become so expensive. I want to make money to facilitate the hobby. I'm not looking to become rich. I just want to be able to buy, you know, filter media and water. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to buy water, but you know what I mean. Want to facilitate the hobby. What should I breed, you, Mr. Fish Store owner, that if I can't get rid of on my own and sell for, you know, a little below retail price, that I can bring into you and sell to you for a couple dollars a piece? What would you like me to walk in with a bag full of?
Sure. So if you just gave me that sales pitch at my store, the first thing I would tell you is, I'm not interested in buying if you're going to sell at a little bit below retail and then sell the leftovers to me, because you're already flooding the market on me. Now, if you're wanting to establish a relationship with me and sell to, let's say, only me and outside of my selling zone, and I personally have kind of gone into this in my breeding series, but usually a store's breeding zone is about 50 miles around them is where someone's might be willing to travel. But I don't like to work with people that are like, okay, I'm selling it on the local Facebook groups, I'm selling it on Craigslist, and I've got a little YouTube channel, and what I can't sell in all those things, I'm willing to sell to you at a discount, because then I'm left to pick up the smallest pieces. Now, it takes a little bit of faith on both sides, as I would tell you. Like, you have to believe that I'm going to be able to move this fish, and that I'm going to give you a reasonable price. But you also need to understand that if you're selling it to everyone that's willing to buy one and then want me to buy them, I'm at a disadvantage. So, yeah, that's how I start that conversation is, if we're here, we both need to make money and make it a win-win situation, not I'll buy a locally bred fish after the market's flooded. Because if you're breeding an Oscar and you've lowered the price, and all of a sudden Oscars are $3 to anyone who wants one, and then I can buy them off you for $1, except everyone's got too many Oscars. I don't need any at that point.
No, that's a good point. I mean, and I actually hadn't thought of it that way. I didn't buy a lot of fish from people. I think I bought fish one time. No, I did have one guy, an angel guy, that I bought fish from. But other than that, I think there was one time where I bought fish from somebody. I never really thought of that angle. Yeah, you're bringing me all of your leftovers. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a common problem from where I'm at, because within like a 10, 15 mile radius, there might be 7 or 8 stores. Like, we're really condensed, right? Here in Seattle, lots of stores. And the problem we have is there's breeders, and let's just use an angelfish breeder for an example. And let's say you spawn angelfish once, and they spawn 700 babies, and you raise them all up. It's been 3 or 4 months. They're ready to sell. And you bring, Aquarium Co-op, I buy 50 of them, and every other store buys 50 of them. Now every store has 50 of the same exact angelfish. We're all doing war on price. And so let's say I priced them at $12, John prices them at $10, the guy down the street was at $7, and there's another guy at $16. Now all of our customers are price shopping us, going, why is yours this? Why is yours this? And so a lot of people can start looking good or bad. And then if we all sell, let's say the first month we all sell, somewhere between 10 to 20 of them. We now all have 30 of them left. And it's been a month, you have another 700 angelfish ready to go. And all of us are going to go, well, we don't need any more. You shopped it around to every store, and the market couldn't be more flooded. And then, so what most people do is they pivot. They go, okay, angelfish, I'm not making any money. I'm going to do this fish now. Let's say it's yellow lab cichlids. If you follow the same pattern that you just did, you're going to run into the same exact problem. And so I recommend most breeders marry up to a few stores that aren't in direct competition. Let's say you've got me, and then let's say another store is 50 miles away, sell to them, and pick your select stores so that hopefully I do sell 50 angelfish, and you come back to me in a month, and I buy more instead of you getting one cash payout once on that breed of fish, unless that's your goal. There are people that, they move in and go, ooh, no one's got Waru cichlids. I'll breed them, flood it, sell my pair, get out. That is a viable strategy, but most people tend to become, I'm an angelfish guy, I'm a guppy guy, and they want to produce it because they like that fish long term, and that's the problem.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it was a problem that I didn't deal with because the only competition I had was a Petco, and that was like 12 miles away from me. And so any kind of special mom and pop tropical fish store, there was not one within literally 50 miles of me.
Sure.
So I didn't have that as an issue, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if everybody in town has these fish and they're a dime a dozen, you also, as a businessman, not the store owner, but the breeder who's trying to make money from this, you have to look at it as, well, because the market's so flooded, you're going to have to drop your price in order to get rid of them. You're only going to be selling them to the fish store for 50 cents a piece for those, quarter size angels. Now you're not making any money. Again, this goes back to what I was saying. It's got to be the right fish. It's got to be the right area. It's got to be the right fish for that area. If it's not, this could be something that could blow up in your face.
If you were breeding African cichlids in Seattle, you'd be the poorest man I know because our water is horrible for it. And no one wants African cichlids. It's not that no one keeps an African cichlid tank, but realize that, maybe in California or the East Coast, you breed yellow labs and you can sell unlimited amounts. One batch, you've pretty much flooded out the stores here in Washington because our water is horrible for it. So you're definitely spot on with right fish to right area.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so weird to me because African cichlids are so popular. I mean, last I heard, and who knows who I heard this from, but they were the most popular fish in the freshwater fish keeping hobby. I mean, I guess that could certainly be debated, and that's not what we're talking about here today. But it's just surprising to me. But it makes total sense. If the water's not good for them, then that's not going to work. But I mean, I think the moral of what I'm trying to get across here is breeding fish can be a lot of fun if you're trying to do it as an extension of the hobby. I mean, it's why I'm sitting here. I mean, Lisa and I decided we were going to start breeding fish because it was fun, and then all of a sudden it turned into this huge thing, and now, here I am. So it's a lot of fun. It's something awesome to add to the hobby. It can absolutely get out of control, and if it gets out of control, if you don't have the means to get rid of the fish, then you're screwed. I mean, so making sure that what you're breeding is the right fish, I think is the biggest lesson out there. Unless you are someone who does want to sell online. This is something that I'm pretty well versed in. You said none of it because of the hassle of selling fish online. So maybe I'll touch on that a little bit, and you can certainly chime in too. But that's what a lot of people say is, well, if I breed, I heard people in my store say this, if I breed a particular fish and I can't get rid of them, I'll just sell them online. and that's great. I mean, you certainly can, because you have access to the entire country. You're not going to ship overseas. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to get an exporter's license. You're just not going to do that. So you're going to be in the States. There is a lot to learn about shipping fish, though. And the main thing to learn about it is you're going to lose money, and you're going to lose money on probably every single one of them because of the cost of shipping. Unless you make it a very strict thing where you're like, look, I'm just doing this from my basement for fun. If you're going to order 5 peacock cichlids from me, that's great. You're going to pay exactly what I am charged for shipping. I'm not going to do some kind of flat rate or anything. That's the only way you can actually make money from doing that, from shipping them out to people, from selling them online. But then, the conversation turns into, you got to have a website, you got to do this, you got to do that, credit card processing, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to it. It's not just, oh, well, I'll just, drop them off at the post office and it'll be fine. I mean, there's a lot more to selling fish online, and it's expensive. It's expensive to ship fish. So it is an option, but it's a difficult option. And if you're going to use that as an option that you're going to rely on to get rid of these hard to find whiptail catfish, then good luck. I mean, because it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I think selling fish online is about as easy as shipping ice cream. It's literally, it honestly might be easier to ship ice cream because you can use dry ice than shipping a fish, because all you have to do with ice cream is keep it cold. And when you ship fish, and this is someone that's done a lot of it, you always think you know what's going on until you watch a plane divert because of weather. And you're like, well, it was never supposed to sit in Texas for an extra day. And they cooked because they were supposed to go from here straight to Wisconsin, and it's freezing over there. So there's heat packs, and I've literally just boiled them alive. And I think it's harder to ship something warm than it is to ship something cold. And so, you can imagine how hard it would be to be shipping ice cream right now, because you're going to go, well, it's going to melt. The same thing's going to happen with fish. It's going to melt. Like, you ship it, any delay on probably more than half the country right now, that water's going to hit 120 degrees and they'll run out of oxygen. There's going to die. So, there's a lot of people that don't ship in summer, late summer, actually.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about too is, just like we talked about, or I've been kind of beating to death, as far as it being the right fish. If you're going to sell online, it has to be the right fish too, because I could breed cardinal tetras. I don't know how to breed them, but if you breed cardinal tetras and you're going to sell them for $3 a piece, who's going to spend $40 to ship a $3 fish, or even 10 $3 fish? That's unrealistic to think that you would see that. This is why you see people selling rare, like South American cichlids and stuff like that, African cichlids, of course, discus, some rarer angels and stuff like that. Because those are high dollar fish. A $50 discus that you can't find anywhere else. You go to Discus Hans, you go to Live Fish Direct, you see them on their websites, and you're like, okay, well, it cost me $40 to ship, but if I buy 3 or 4 of these, it's not that big of a deal. That's where it makes sense. But you're not going to have somebody buying your guppies at $5 a piece and then paying $60 to ship them across the country. I mean, that's just not going to do it. So there is so much to it. And I mean, maybe I should bring James Largo, my good friend from Arizona, onto one of these live streams, because that's what he does. That's what he's doing right now. The Cichlid Shack is his website, and he could tell everybody firsthand how it goes. It is highly competitive online. It is extremely expensive. And it's extremely scary because, I mean, I don't know about you, Corey, but I lost a lot of sleep knowing that fish were in the air on the way to customers, especially in the wintertime. I worried about it more in the winter than I did in the summer, because I was dealing with fish that like the water to be warm. So if it sat on a tarmac, it wouldn't be a huge issue, and they were well insulated. But wintertime would scare me to death, and I would lose a lot of sleep. So those are just all things to think about. I mean, I'm looking at it more from the business side than the fun side. And one of the things that I want to say is, if you are someone, and Corey, you've kind of been on this track the whole time, if you're somebody that wants to breed for the enjoyment of it, if you're somebody who wants to breed dovi because they're one of the most gorgeous freshwater aquarium fish you can have, and you've always wanted to conquer the world of breeding dovi, let everything that I'm saying just be the last thing that you think about. Because if you're trying to do it just for fun, because it's something that you feel like you'll enjoy, whether that's Dovite, I don't know why I keep saying Dovite because your guy last night, but whether it's angels or discus or whatever it is, think about those problems later on. If you're doing it just for fun, do it because it is fun and you can worry about all the other stuff later. I'm a businessman, and so that's just what I, naturally I'm going to go to.
So maybe we do some more breeding setups, or does anyone have specific breeding questions, or where do you want to take it from here? Because I feel like we're delving on making it a business when I think most people will never take it that seriously. Mostly like, I call them the biggest breeders or oops breeders, like, oh, I didn't know, and now I have babies type of scenarios.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I'm in a small shop, I was in a small shop in a small town, and it was the worst place in the world to open a fish store. But you'd be shocked. I'm sure you're not. I mean, it was amazing how many people would come into me and they would be like, hey, guess what? My angel spawned and I had a lot of fun with it. I want to do this more and I want to make money. It was something that I talked about a lot. And so I naturally, and people may hate me for it, I don't know, but I naturally go to the business side. It's not all about money to me. It's just I've experienced it. You've experienced it. I've been in those situations where you have so many fish, you don't know what you're going to do. You can't get rid of them. I've made these mistakes. I've had these things happen. So that's where I naturally go.
No, I think that's a true statement. I guess part of it is, it's hard with the customer because you're trying to explain to them, like, you're not the unique snowflake. Like on some of these things, when people go like, my bristlenose have bred, it's like, well, whose bristlenose aren't breeding? That's the problem. And people go, well, how much should you give me for them? It's like, well, actually, there's a wait list of people to give them to me at the moment. So when it comes to buying them, you're behind about 20 people that are trying to give them to me. And, so that's part of the problem. And then you kind of try and redirect them. But there are things you could be breeding that I would be buying. And the most common question I get is, what is it that I can breed that you will buy? And my response is always, anything I'm selling in the store, I'm willing to buy. But what is it that you can actually breed? Because I know myself, I can't crank out rummy nose tetras because it's too difficult for my skill set currently. So if I tell the customer I'd buy cardinal tetras, rummy nose tetras, zebra plecos, this and that doesn't really help them. And so then usually it starts a longer conversation of what have you bred, what's the next step up maybe, and what are you enjoying?
You have a guest in there with you?
Yeah, my wife just got off work, so she's
hi, wife. She can't hear me because I'm on the headphones, but I want to touch on that a little bit because I did have that. I had a couple of shady dudes come into my shop with bags of fish. And the other thing to think about when it comes to selling fish to pet stores, first thing you have to think about is, if I, as a fish store owner, can buy fish from my distributor who I know, who I trust is going to provide me with good, healthy fish, and I can pay X amount of dollars for them, why would I pay you, some guy I've never met and I don't know, why would I pay you the same amount? I mean, you got to think about those kind of things. Because if I didn't know somebody, I wasn't all that keen on buying fish from them. The first fish I ever got from anybody in my pet store was the day we opened, and it was a guy that I had never met before that walked in with 2 bags of angelfish, and they were gorgeous. They were black veil angelfish, and he's like, here, take these, and here's my number, call me if you want more. And we sold them in like a week. I mean, it was a beautiful thing. We actually became very good friends with these people. His wife is a math teacher at the middle school here in King George, and she's taught every single one of our kids. And I did a 7-part breeding angel series with him. His name is Dave Warren. We became very close friends. But when it started, when he came in with those bags, we were swamped. It was our grand opening day. I didn't have time to even think about it. But if he had done that 6 months later when things had calmed down, I probably would have been like, hold on there a minute. Wait a second. I don't know you. I don't know where these fish came from. So you got to think about that a little bit. But he was also very fair priced, and everything was all good. So,
yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead. We've been going for an hour already. We've been running our mouths. And since it's last minute you coming on here, I don't want to take up your entire night, even though, yeah, whatever. I don't want to take up your whole night.
Whether I'm working, on this live stream right now, or I'm not on the live stream working on a different video, I'll be doing the same thing. So I'm good to go.
Okay. This is a good question, and it's on breeding. So thank you, FinTime, for asking a breeding related question. From this point on, folks, the questions do not need to be specifically about breeding. We can talk about anything, anything that you want. FinTime's question is a question. All right, this is going to sound stupid, but if you breed some fish and you keep the fry, and then the fry get bigger and breed, are you going to run into deformities and a bad strain of fish? The answer is you're no more likely to have that happen, at least with African cichlids. You're no more likely to have that than if you had bred two complete strangers. It's what a lot of the pro breeders out there would consider line breeding. It doesn't matter if they're brother and sister. It doesn't matter if they're mother and son. You're taking two fish that have the best qualities possible that you're trying to refine in your strain of fish that you're breeding. You can breed those together, and you won't have any more risk of deformities than any other fish out there. I don't know if it's the same across the board, Corey. Maybe you can fill me in on that. But as far as African cichlids goes, it doesn't matter who's who.
I think it is very similar across the board. I know, like at the Texas Stock Center, which it's an entity that exists that basically houses like every type of swordtail and then a lot of platies. A lot of them are extinct in the wild, and some of them are extinct since, let's say, the 50s and 60s. And they've had the same strain the entire time, and they've had to inbreed because you can't go out and get more. They don't exist. And what they found is even after like 50 generations, genetically still pretty darn strong. Now, you could make a case that if they randomly found a wild population today and took some of those into the strain they had, would it be stronger? Yes, but also look at things like dogs. We've inbred dogs for so many years, and we have made some very weak genetic dogs, but that is more from our select line breeding of, we're trying to get a shorter nose, we're trying to get stubbier legs, things like that. If you let nature just do its thing, it's going to be more genetically diverse. Now, that being said, if we're being responsible fish breeders, it would be best if we remove things from the gene pool that are clearly defective. That will, might mean that, it's going to take a much longer time to run into genetics. But if you have a fish that, clearly just has, something horribly wrong with it, and you intentionally breed it, it's a much higher percentage that will continue on down the line. And a lot of times when it comes to genetics, you actually don't see what's called the genetic expression in the fry. So you take mom and dad, you breed them, the next batch, you can get no defects, but then if you breed those, you might get 50 or 75% that all come out with that defect. And that's when you're line breeding, it's actually important to have a few generations so you can always like back up and go, whoa, I put some bad genes together, I should really refine this. And with like guppies and stuff, which I'm a library guy, a lot of times you'll get a guppy where it's the way you want it. Maybe it's purple, it's got this big tail, the dorsal fin's big, the body shape's big. You've done all this thing, it's taken you 12 years. Then what you have to do is you have to outcross it with another one from someone else's line to make it stronger. You're going to lose a little bit of the characteristics, but that fish that you've made perfect is genetically very weak. Like it probably doesn't have its resistances to diseases and things like that. And you can pick all those traits back up from a different line. And, but that's very heavy inbreeding to do that. And outcrossing is what strengthens it again, which if you're only doing, let's say you take yellow labs under your wing and you're going to make yellow labs in your aquarium and you do it for 6 years and you're constantly just removing things that are bad, your line is probably genetically very good. But 20 years down the road, okay, yeah, there's a case for crossing something in just to sleep better at night, really. And no one's going to pay for the DNA genetic testing to see what sets of genes do I have, should I outcross. It's cheaper to go, well, I'll buy $20 worth of fish, cross them in, and then keep going and just assume I've done good things.
Yeah, we bred for a business for 3 years straight. and I never had one person ask me, are these line bred? You know, I don't think it's something that a lot of people are concerned about as far as the people that are buying fish, but breeders, it's a very common question. It was a question that I had when I first started. I thought you had to get, you know, if you were going to breed African cichlids, you had to buy a male from this place and 6 females from 6 different places because they can't dare. I mean, of course, I learned real quick that was not true. And like I said before, I saw no difference in broods from breeding mother to son or whatever it is. And I actually did that one time, mother to son. There was never any issues there. But if there is an issue with a batch of fry, it's more than likely a problem with one or the other parent, not the fact that it's line bred. An example being, I had electric blue Ali, a breeding colony of electric blue Alis. And it took me months to figure this out. But I had one particular female that half of her brood every single time, they would look like little horseshoes. They would look like this. And they would just literally, as soon as she released them from her mouth, they would swim in circles. That's all they could do. It was horrible. I felt so bad for them. And I did what I had to do with those. But it took me a while to figure out who that female was to get her out of the equation. And that wasn't because she was being line bred. It was just because something was wrong with her. It obviously wasn't the father because he was spawning with all of the other females and there was no curly Q fish in those. We called them onion rings. It was cute. But, you know, it didn't have anything to do with line breeding. And if you read up on breeding African cichlids in particular, because these are the books that I've read, there are a lot of people that believe that you can actually refine a strain by doing that, by line breeding, specifically line breeding. So, all right, let's move on from that. Somebody asked about breeding silver dollars. I have never done it. Are you experienced in breeding silver dollars?
I haven't done it. I feel like I could do it. It's that's a fish where I wouldn't do it because I think it's a reward versus time invested is not where I want it to be. But I think that gentleman said they were also, he witnessed the eggs, and that's a good start. That means you've got eggs. The trouble I think he's running into is separating the eggs from being devoured by the parents. Now, this is where I said I'm not a guy who breeds egg scatterers all the time because it's labor intensive. But if you were going to breed these silver dollars, here's what you'd do. You'd either use lots of spawning mops, or spawning mops on the ground too, and you want these eggs to land on these. Then you're going to remove the spawning mops into a hatching tank, or you're going to remove the silver dollars. Now, there's other methods as well where, let's say you took these silver dollars, and I don't know how big they are, but let's say they're this big. So you're going to need a decent sized aquarium to pull this off. Maybe it's a 55, and you use egg crate lighting diffuser as a false bottom, and you put little PVC so it elevates it maybe an inch off the bottom, and you put some mops and well, you can't put live plants because silver dollars are going to eat them, which normally you'd use Java moss or something, but use yarn and things like that over this egg crate. They're going to go down and spawn all over it. And the goal is that the eggs will fall through the egg crate because a lot of times with silver dollars, barbs, tetras and stuff, you'll have a few males spawning and you'll have the females spawning, but the ones that aren't actively spawning, they're actively eating the eggs. And so even though they might spawn for 2 hours, you have some fish spawning, and you have some fish eating, and at the end of the 2 hours, there's no eggs left. And so you need those eggs to fall through that false bottom so that you can then net the fish out, and then either A, you're going to raise them that 55, which would be kind of hard because they're going to be tiny fry and a lot of food's going to have to go in, or B, you can at least harvest those eggs and move them to a smaller aquarium. But those would be the next steps. And that's why a lot of people don't breed something like that, is you're going, well, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm going to have like a 55-gallon tank. I'm going to have some small rearing tanks. I got to do all this setup and make all this magic happen so you can make a fish that's going to retail at maybe $5, and then at the same time, they're going to spawn somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 eggs at a time. And that's a lot of stuff to tackle. So.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad you were able to talk about that because I know nothing about breeding silver dollars. Joey's probably going to know something sooner or later because he's just got so many of them.
He's got big wildcat ones, so it's probably just a matter of time before he gets spawning behavior. But even then, he'll have to set up and make something happen to be able to pull out any eggs if he wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to. I saw one here that I liked. Okay. Um, John Maravich. Would a 10-gallon sump work for a 100-gallon tank? I'm new to sumps and trying to figure it all out. I don't know the actual equations that need to be used to calculate the size of a sump for a particular size tank, but I can tell you the answer to that is no. I mean, a 10-gallon tank is so small. I mean, you might be able to provide enough filtration in a 10-gallon tank, but there's not enough room to work with in a 10-gallon when you're talking about a tank the size of a 100-gallon. You need room to have whatever kind of tower you're going to use, or if you're going to have a moving bed filter, then you've got your actual sump area where your heaters are going to be and whatever kind of chemical media you have in there, your pump and all of that. 10-gallon tank just isn't going to be enough. That would be my opinion there. But it doesn't need to be for a 100-gallon tank. It doesn't need to be a 75-gallon aquarium that you would use for a sump either. I would think maybe like a 30 long would be something good to use for a sump for a 100-gallon. That might be a little bit extreme, but I think that it would fit. I mean, that would give you more than enough room to work with and get pretty creative when it comes to whatever it is that you're going to use for your filtration, whether it's bio balls or whatever it is that you're using. What do you think, Corey?
I think you can't really go too big, just because it's like buying an insurance policy. The bigger the sump, the better water quality you're going to have, and the more you can hold. And I think one of the best places to maybe start researching how big your sump needs to be might be in like Joey's book, King of DIY. I know there's some formulas in there, and what it comes down to is how much surface area. If this 100-gallon tank was 10 feet tall but only 6 inches wide and only 4 feet long, when it drains 2 inches, it might only be 3 gallons of water. But if that tank was really wide and long, and 1 inch of water was, if it's only 2 inches tall, but it's like 50 feet long and 10 feet wide, 2 inches might be 40 gallons of that tank or something, or 50 gallons. And so there is a formula, and it's one of those things where I never do the formula. I just go for what makes money sense. So for me, like on this tank right behind me, it's about a 180-gallon tank. And I used a 29-gallon sump because that cost me $29 at Petco. I would have used a 40 breeder, except it wouldn't fit in the stand the way it was. But I just buy my way through money and go, for $40, I never have to worry about it again. Awesome. Whereas, yes, I could figure it all out and go, okay, I could do it with, turns out a 20-gallon would work. And when it's running, it's going to have 17 gallons of water. And if I make less than a 1%, mistake on how much water I've put in, I'm going to put some water on the floor. I always want to build that extra in so I can go, phew, glad that I'm dumb, but I was smart enough to plan that I'm going to be dumb.
Yeah, and with my 240 at my shop, I used a 55, and I feel like an idiot for not mentioning what you just talked about. This is why you and I compliment each other so well, you compliment me. Because it escaped me about the whole, when the power goes out, the water drains down. If you only have a 10-gallon tank, you're going to have a huge mess. That's absolutely probably the number one reason not to use a 10-gallon tank. I always liked to use tall tanks. So like in your case, you used the 29. Those are like 20 inches tall or whatever. That's good because you can have that your tower on one side or whatever, have your 6 inches of water in the bottom, and then have a ton of space there to fit 20 gallons or more of water that would come down if the power went out. So yeah, brilliant that you thought of that. But again, I used a 55-gallon tank on my 240-gallon. I'm pointing to this. It wasn't that tank, but it was a 55, and I ran it like that for like 3.5 years with nothing but that, just the 55-gallon tank for a 240. So if you're going strictly gallons, your tank is a little less than half. The gentleman that asked this question, his tank is a little less than half the size of mine. So the 29, like Corey said, is probably going to be the thing that would work perfectly. And like you said, Corey, 29 gallons are dirt cheap. I mean, we bought one at a thrift store one time for $5. So, you can pick those up real easy, and that works out really good. So Let's see. Somebody asked, I don't think either you or I, Corey, are experts on building aquariums. That would be one for when Joey comes on here, which will happen eventually. Can you use plexiglass 1/4 inch thick to build a tank? I'm going to go ahead and give that a hell no. 1/4 inch glass, yes. 1/4 inch plexiglass. I mean, you can go waka 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 with it. I mean, it's like, did you like that sound? It's like a flimsy thing. And if you were to build, I mean, I could put my fist right through it.
I'm going to say you could, because it didn't say what size. Like if you're building, let's say
a beta tank,
a 10-inch cube, like a little nano shrimp tank, it could be done. It still would come back to a 1/4 inch acrylic. If you're only building something that small is so cheap, I would go to 3/8 or something like that for $12 more and sleep at night, you know. But if we're talking big tanks, and that's where money really starts coming in, 1/4 inch acrylic versus 3/8 versus 1/2 inch, you're going, well, 1/2 inch is going to cost me $800 in acrylic, and 1/4 inch only cost me $400. Yeah, but you couldn't build a big tank out of 1/4 inch. You know, maybe some sumps, and I don't even like building sumps out of it. And it really comes down to how many braces and things you're putting in. And most people don't put in enough braces, and they're not that good at designing tanks. And when I say most people, I'm most people. Like, I pay to have professionals design my tanks and build them, because I don't know the strength of you know, a rounded corner versus a not rounded corner, versus when you bullnose both sides and round it, that adds X amount of structural integrity. And I don't have the tools to do that. So I would be like, yeah, I can make a square and I can Euro brace it. I could do all that at home, but that's not going to be anywhere near the strength of what a professional can do with all their table routers and things like that.
Yeah, this is a perfect opportunity for me to say customaquariums.com. Head over, email me if you want a custom aquarium, and I can fix you up with one. I just got an email from a gentleman today that wanted to get a 9-foot long tank, 9 inch, or which works out to be what, 100 and, I'm an idiot. 9 feet by 30 inches by 30 inches. So he wants a big one.
It sounds like 340 or something like that off the top of my head, because I think 8 by 30 by 30 is 300. Maybe 8 by 2 by 30 is 300. So yeah, it's probably more like 4.
Yeah, I think you're right, because my 8 by 2 by 2 was 240. So yeah, then we got another aquarium question. I'm going to answer this one just based on my very limited knowledge. Again, there's a guy that lives up in Nova Scotia that could answer this much better than I could. Creating your own aquarium, is tempered glass a necessity? This is from Joseph. I'm not going to botch your last name. Thank you, Joseph, for sending in the question. No, it's not a necessity. In fact, there's a lot of people that poo-poo the idea of using tempered glass because it's extraordinarily hard to drill and all of that kind of stuff. There's people that would swear by it. There's people that would say, no way you should build a tank out of tempered glass. I think that a lot of people want the bottom of the tank to be tempered glass, but it's not necessary. Listen to the way I'm talking. It's not necessary to build the whole tank out of that. But, you know, let's hope you have a differing opinion, Corey, so we can argue.
From what I understand, and I'm not going to claim to know the mechanics of this, but let's say you had 1/4 inch glass that was non-tempered, and then you have 1/4 inch glass that is tempered. The tempered should be much stronger, and I'm not even sure about this, but I think tempering and maybe annealing is different than that, but I think annealing is even stronger than tempered. But the reason why you might go with tempered is when thickness becomes an issue. So for instance, let's say you had an aquarium, it's going to be big, and it calls for 1 inch thick glass, and you're going, well, now it's going to take a forklift to put that tank into place. You might be able to go with, oh, it's only 3/4 inch glass if I temper it. And so I think that if you're building your own tank is what it comes down to, of can I carry it and move it and things like that, and price, not so much, you know, if you're building a 55-gallon aquarium, most tanks will maybe have a tempered bottom and nothing else. And all old tanks, you know, if you remember tanks from 20, 30 years ago, they were all very thick glass because thick glass is cheap. The tanks were really heavy, but they weren't really tempering them. Now that weight has become an issue when we're putting them into semis and driving them around the country and things like that, Now, most of the Aquarium tanks and stuff like that, 55s and stuff, they are tempered. It reduces weight, adds a little bit of strength, and they can use thinner glass. But that's my take on it, on why you might or might not use tempered glass.
Okay, well, yeah, you're smarter than me. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that. You're not better looking. Both of us are dogs, but you're smarter than me, and I will give you that. I'm going to touch on something real quick, and then I'm going to give you a big question, and it's a question for you. It's not for me. I'm going to sit back, and I'm going to have a vape and have a drink of my Coke and listen to you answer it. But this one I want to answer real quick because somebody asked me about my personal stuff here. Do you prefer glass or acrylic? And what are your tanks glass? All of my tanks in my house that I own, every tank that I've ever owned has been glass. So you would think that I prefer glass over acrylic, and it's not true. I like them both. I think they're both awesome. They both have their pros. They both have their cons. Acrylic certainly scratches easier than glass, but it can also be repaired. It's a lengthy process, but it can be done. Glass repair, it never goes well. So, but I don't have glass tanks because I prefer glass. I have glass tanks because I've just never had an acrylic. So that's the only way to answer that. Now, this is a question that people are blowing me up, Corey. I don't know if you see the Facebook feed, but it is a question that I'm glad got repeated because my good man, Scuba Steve, the president of the Scuba Squad, asked me last week, and I was like, what? I don't know. Asked me this question, and I said, you know what? I bet you that smart-ass Corey knows the answer to this.
Uh-oh, this is a big lead-up, because I better know this, because otherwise it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, you're going to make us both look bad, because I've got faith in you here. Is it possible to fully eradicate protozoa in the intestinal tract of South American cichlids? I will push mute now, and I will wait for your response.
All right, so this is definitely a grain of salt thing here. I think, off the top of my head, I think you can eradicate it. I don't think you'll ever be able to prove it as a home hobbyist. So we can get very close to perfect, but the reality is, as a home hobbyist, to maybe guarantee that we've eradicated something, we'd have to do fecal smears and things like that. And I've taken some classes on how to do that. And on average, the used microscope that can do it, even on eBay and as cheap as I can find, I don't even own one yet, was somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to pull off, to see the protozoa and stuff that are going to be small enough that, or that scope can magnify enough to see those very small ones. So what I think we can do is we can get to a reasonable level of a healthy fish. And that's where we're using different known anti-parasite and dewormers to the point where we can be reasonably sure that there are so few left that it's not going to plague the fish long term. And that might take a dose of general cure. It might take a dose of flubendazole, which is the version of fenbendazole that can dissolve into water. And then it might take some levamisole too. And between all those treatments, we can probably reasonably say we've gotten rid of most things. Now, there are things that there is no known cure for, and that can hit things like salmon farms and stuff like that, where the answer comes back once they perform the necropsies and stuff, you send your fish away, there's no known cure, there's no way to get rid of it, destroy the entire facility, start over. Now, so that's why it's like, well, it's hard to say to get rid of all of it. I think we can get rid of all that we can treat as a hobbyist. I think we can get there, but it can be costly to do it. And then at the same time, if we're putting all these fish through all these meds, what damage have we done to their kidneys and stuff like that? So a lot of times, fish in the wild, they will have tapeworms, they will have parasites, they will have all these things. And in general, fish in the wild, when you look at their pictures, are going to be very skinny. And it's because they don't get fed as much, and they've got all these things plaguing their system. In the wild, they're not meant to live 14 years. They're meant to, they live 3 or 4, and they spawned enough to replace themselves and keep going. We always strive for the best in our hobby, and I get that. We want what's best for our pets, but at the same time, let's say we left, very few protozoans where it barely hindered the fish at all, but we were on a quest to make it perfect, and we blow out their kidney or their liver, and they die from one of those failures. That's worse, in my opinion. So while I think it is something that can be done, I'm not sure it's something I could recommend. I can recommend a reasonable amount of prevention, but the reality is, to get the end result someone was looking for, we're probably a $5,000 investment to be able to start actually evaluating whether it can be done. If you didn't want that investment, you can take fecal matter and you can order the fish. You can take it to a vet. They can pull stuff from the fish, do gill scrapings. They can do lateral line scrapings and the fecal smear. Then they're going to package that, and they're going to overnight it to the closest university that has the equipment to actually analyze that. And even they know that every hour that goes by, there's certain things they won't be able to detect. So the faster you can get it there, the better. And then each test you have them run. So like, let's say you wanted to know, do I have this nematode in there? It's $250 or so. And then they go, well, there's 75 different things we can test for. Which ones do you want us to test for? And you're going, well, I don't know that it's worth it to me. That being said, if you have the only red doveye in existence, maybe it is. Maybe it's worth that, $4,000. But I think we're on a lot of people get on this, me in particular too. We get on a quest for perfection without realizing perfection is actually worse than almost pretty good.
Yeah, and the end of that story goes, you spend, even if it's just $250 for a fish that you paid $20 for. I mean, and that's one of the biggest arguments that I would go with. I had a conversation with somebody that is very well known in the industry, and I'm not going to say who it was, but we had a fun conversation one time, and it wasn't picking on anybody in particular. It was just, he knew people, and I had talked to people that spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for medications to medicate a tank that, all of the fish in the tank combined to $20, and it's like, man, I mean, and I get it. I totally get it. I'm not saying they get sick, just throw them away. I mean, I'm not doing that at all, but it's kind of crazy how much money people will spend on some of this stuff. And there's a whole industry around it, so it makes sense. I want to bring up something kind of funny here that I just saw in the comment section. Somebody commented, and his name is John Corey. I thought that was pretty funny.
I know that guy, actually.
Do you know that guy? And the funny thing about it is that his comment is Scuba Side Squad. I love it. You mix up Suicide Squad. I love it. It's beautiful. All right, let me get to a question here. Another one that I don't know the answer to. I can give you some insight as to what I know about a particular part of the hobby. But Kevin Green asked, he always comes up with these oddball questions. How far does fish keeping date back? Whether it's in a tank or in a pond, I thought it would be an interesting question that everyone would like to know. It's a great question, and I know it goes back farther than people think. Me being in the African cichlid world mostly, I know that, and discus too, they became very popular in like the late 60s, early 70s is when they really took off. 70s in particular is when you got people like Stuart Grant and stuff like that involved that started to export them from Africa to the Bureau brothers and the Bailey brothers and all of these other people. And that's when the African cichlid world really took off. But people were keeping aquariums way, way, way before that. I mean, have you ever heard a date of like the first recorded?
Ooh, I know of like some types of fish, and I am like the worst person to ask this question to, because I focus all of my mental energy on things like breeding and keeping a fish alive. And, I do throw some statistics in there, but realize that what I'm about to say, you're going to go, this guy doesn't know anything. He was 6 years off, and it's like, I'm fully aware I'm not going to say the exact correct date, but we do know things like fancy goldfish from the common carp were developed for Chinese emperors and things like that. And that goes way, way back. We also know things like the first tropical fish to ever be imported into the United States was the paradise fish. And it was brought in the old kind of like, I it might not be steel, but I want to say they're steel or cast iron or something like that, milk jugs that they bring over on boats and things like that. And the paradise fish was the only thing they could get to live because everything else died on the journey. But being that it was an anabantoid like a betta, and it could survive the giant temperature fluctuations and everything like that, that was the first tropical fish to make it here. But, you know, if you're going to ask me, like, well, what was the exact first, you know, documented fancy goldfish for a Chinese emperor, I'm going to go, well, either A, you can go to, you know, WikiLinks or whatever and look it up, or I can right now and then sound super smart when I go, well, it was 1594, you know. So I don't know the exact time. I just know roughly there's at least those I can point to. But, you know, for all I know, you can find, you know, some crazy, you know, way long time ago reference to, you know, someone in Egypt or something with some kind of crazy desert pupfish or something like that. But I don't know that to be true, but I'm certain that it goes back way longer than I can even ever think about. So, yeah.
All right. Well, there's a very sad comment here that I wanted to read. And I lost it because of what my mouse does. And it just makes me so mad. So not going to be able to do that one. Mike Angel, the guy I talked about earlier, asked a question of me that I'm going to look up for him. Kind of going to exactly what you just said, you know, well, you want the answer, you can look it up yourself, but I'm going to do it for him because Mike Angel is a good dude. He asked how much that tree stump from Universal Rocks is. Have you seen any of my videos yet, Corey, with that in it? Did you see that yet?
You did? Where you what zip tied the back of it and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly did.
I do watch you. I mean, I always tell everyone I don't watch stuff, but it's like I fit it in wherever I can, but I'm always afraid people are like, did you see this one? Or like, actually, I didn't. I skipped that one, but I try to watch as much stuff as I can, really.
Okay, I do see it. It is on here now. That's very, very cool. If you go to Universal Rocks, Mike Angel, or anyone else watching, if you go to universalrocks.com and then you go to on the left, you go to the tree products and then the tree stumps tab. It is the 008 is mine. And let me click on it to give you some specifications that they have put on here. It is 46 inches long. It's 27 inches tall. No, it's 37 inches tall. It's 27 inches deep, and it weighs 15 pounds. It sells for $199.99. So that is the answer to Mike Angel's question, just because I like that guy.
Does your code get him a discount off that $199? Is that how that works?
Well, aren't you just the salesman? Thank you very much.
Well, I just thought the real price is actually whatever your discount is. I don't know what your discount is, but, you know, if we're quoting a price, let's quote the right one.
Yep, it's very, very true. Mike Angel, you definitely need to know that. $199.99 is the price on the website. But if you put Tank Talk into the promo box at checkout, they're going to take 15% off, which is going to be $30. I mean, that's big. That's a big discount. Basically, you'd be getting shipping for free. I mean, is what it would come down to. So there you go. And that's something I'm really glad that he asked, because somebody asked me that, you know, in the comment section of that video, and it actually wasn't on the website yet, but they have since put it up. And they told me it was probably going to be about $200, but I didn't want to say anything because I actually had this before they even made it available for sale. So I feel kind of special. I've got that tree stump in there, and I have a fish in there that nobody else has. So it makes me feel kind of special. There was another comment, and you know, this is the part, Corey, where we can just have some fun and we can do whatever we want to do.
Never have fun. It's all business.
Yeah, right. Well, you're going to have fun with me. I'll loosen you up. We've been going for an hour and a half. Somebody, and I'm not going to give him a hard time because his name is Redskins fan forever, made sure that I was aware that my Skins are losing 23-10. But you know what? It's the first game of the preseason. I really don't care. Our first teamers looked good. That's all that matters. So there you go. But let's see if we can find the people in Facebook, Corey. They're going nuts talking about video feeds are off and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of monitoring it over here, and it looks fine to me. People are talking about tacos.
I think my wife's debating between nachos and tacos for dinner. It's making me hungrier by the minute.
Okay.
Even though I ate before I came on the stream, I didn't eat that much, knowing full well, hopefully I'll get some good dinner.
Well, there you go. And see, it's still early for you there. I mean,
for me,
it's 6:30 there, right? So somebody asked, did I ever get the trout cichlid? I did. Unfortunately, I cannot take you over there to see him because I'm on my webcam right now. But yeah, he's in there. Largo sent me a trout cichlid that he swears is a male. The individual that asked that is Tim's Tanks. Tim, if you're a member of the Tank Talk Facebook group, if you're not, you should join. Scroll down. It's way down now. Scroll down to my latest live stream on Facebook, and I showed it close up on there. It just looks like a trout cichlid right now. It's not showing a bunch of blue and stuff like that, but you can definitely see some blue around the face. Largo definitely sent me some absolutely beautiful fish. The Cichlid Shack, you should check them out. I am affiliated with Live Fish Direct, so you know I'm not supposed to be promoting other channels, but Largo's a friend of mine. He's been a friend for a long time, and I have no problem directing people his way because he's a good dude and he's got a small business that he's doing the right way. And there we go. So
just as a side comment, the trout cichlids are one of the most ridiculous Africans to ever strip fry from, because once they get huge, they're unwieldy as you're trying to open their mouth. So
yeah, and you know what? Frontosas aren't much easier. So
I've gotten some serious damage from frontosas, but I think it's harder because like with the trout cichlid, they're so long. You got to two-hand them. I feel like a frontosa, a big one for most people is that 12 to 16 inch range. You can kind of get them like under your armpit. You know, you got a shirt on and everything, but you kind of grab them towards the body, and you can hold their mouth and just like open their hand, but they can still totally get you with that top fin, and it's horrible because the top fin on a frontosa is like the spines. They're like needles. Like they're horrible.
Yep. Have you seen the videos? Anybody that hasn't? I mean, I don't think there's an arowana video on YouTube that I have not seen. Have you seen videos of people stripping the arowana males? Because it's the same way. These guys, it's almost like Steve Irwin wrestling a croc, God rest his soul. I mean, they get in the water and, you know, they do the huge, whatever kind of nets you call them, where they,
seine net.
Yeah, and they bring them into an area, and they're like in the water, like wrestling with them, and the eggs on arowanas are like that big with the fry hanging off of it. It's fascinating to watch. If you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. I love arowanas. I probably would do that, but I don't know. That's kind of crazy. I've had to wrestle an arowana out of a tank, and it's not fun. I can't even imagine stripping a fish like that. That's just bananas. So. Somebody asked, can I show the saltwater tank? I really can't. I mean, I can show you from this angle if you want to see it. That's not a very good angle. You can't really see it. There's all the food back there waiting to be sent out to all of y'all. But you have no idea how hard it was for me to hide that food for as long as I did. That was a struggle. But I'm going to do an update video on the saltwater tank, the Fluval M60. I'm going to do that very soon, because it's not brown anymore. It's finally clearing up, and I want to start having some fun with that. I had a hiccup with that tank. It wasn't a hiccup with it as much as it was I put some new stuff in it and it all died. You know, it is what it is, and I learned my lesson real quick that stores don't guarantee saltwater fish at all. So I bought a shrimp and I bought 2 snails, and they died. I was like, I thought those were supposed to be easy. Snails, anyway. I know that shrimp can be tricky, but yeah, I tested my water and everything seemed to be fine. I thought, you know, might as well give it a try. But I also got another fish. I got a blue damsel, which is the fish that everybody told me not to get, but I got it anyway because it was pretty and I like blue fish. So I got 3 fish in there now, and I'm getting ready to ramp things up in there real soon. So I'll be doing an update video on that. So let's see. All right, here's a guppy question, and it's going to be for you, Corey, because, I mean, I've got guppies literally 8 inches from my face, but I can't really tell you a whole lot about them. Freshwater Fix, are assorted fancy guppies just a bunch of different line bred, or are they a different thing? Can you breed assorteds with a line breed pair, or is it that bad?
Well, yeah, they are current day guppies, what you're going to find in PetSmarts, Petco's, mixes I can buy at a wholesale. They're going to be typically all the males from a line bred thing that aren't getting sold for higher dollar. So they'll mix all those up, and then they'll specifically mix other females, so someone can't basically walk into a store and go, oh, I'm going to buy this red delta male and this red delta female and make more of them. So they'll typically try and send like all the delta females to a different part of the country or a different country altogether, and the males go over here. But if you were to start mixing, let's say, red delta guppies and then just a generic fancy guppy, you're going to get fry that come out, and some are going to come out red deltas, some are going to come out assorted, and you could start mixing some of the traits. So maybe instead of a delta tail, now they have a round tail and things like that, and you could play with it. Just as an aside, how you made, not you, but how the Endler Live Bearer, the tiger version, was made was originally a tequila sunrise guppy jumped out of a tank, landed on the rack below for the breeder into an Endler Live Bearer tank. They bred, and that's how we got tiger Endlers. And so that's an example where we've taken kind of specific lines, you breed them together, and out comes something. And then all of a sudden we go, well, that something is cool. We should line breed that. So yeah, most things are going to be just strains that have been mixed together at this point in the random assorted fancy tank.
All right. Somebody commented, blue damsels are super aggressive. That's what I was told too. But I like it. And tell you a funny story about buying that blue damsel, Corey. I'm sure you've experienced this too. Your channel is blowing up. You're world famous. I went to the store with my 17-year-old daughter, and I was in there looking at fish, and a guy comes up to me and he's like, oh my God, you're the KGTropicals guy. And it was kind of weird. But he's actually the one that convinced me to buy the damsel. He said, it's going to be fine. You got two clowns. You're going to be good. And I said, well, let me write your name down. I'm going to call you if things go wrong. But no, I'm just kidding. That was a treat to have somebody it's weird. I mean, my daughter was just laughing for the rest of the day, but everybody does say that blue damsel, or all damsels, are extremely aggressive. I mean, mine, it hasn't been not even one bit.
I've got to take on the damsels. The damsels, from a guy that's done lots of African cichlids, and you've done lots of African cichlids, think of that blue damsel exactly like an African cichlid, and then you'll know why everyone says it's aggressive, because how often do you put just like 2 or 3 Africans in a 20-gallon tank and not expect the aggression? You can totally curb that aggression if you go, well, I've got 10 damsels in there. The problem is saltwater systems aren't supposed to handle that kind of a load, or not designed to. But think of their aggression exactly like a Mabuna cichlid, and you'll totally understand, how am I going to fix this problem? If you do run into any problems, that's how you'll fix it. Think of it just like it's a red zebra, and you'll be able to tackle it.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. And CJ, when I had CJ from CJ's Aquariums on, he used similar type analogies, talking about damsels. But I mean, I haven't had that. I haven't had that in here. And your analogy with the Mbunas, I've had that scenario too, where you've only got 3 of them and there never is a problem. I mean, it's like, yes, theoretically you're not supposed to do it because it could be a problem, but it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have that problem.
The right mix can always happen. Like, oh, who knew it was going to work, but it does. So don't mess with it.
Exactly. I know somebody, well, I don't know him anymore, but there was a regular customer at my shop that kept discus with African cichlids. I mean, I've heard crazier things than a damsel with clowns, but literally he doesn't chase anybody around. The clowns don't chase him around. I've got 3 fish in there and they're all living very happily together. So that all works out good. We'll do a couple more here. What do you think? It's 9:41 my time.
Down.
We'll do a couple more here. One of them is specific to you. Hey, Corey, any idea of interesting plants? Don't give her, or I think it's a her. I don't know. Sorry if it's not. Don't give her any boring ones. They need to be interesting plants that would do well in a 20-gallon with only a T8 light. Already got Anubias and Java Fern.
All right, that's easy. And I always want to. I'm on the campaign against lighting only because we've come so far. Well, yes, I love my LED lighting and things like that, but most people, the way they give advice now if you have a T8, they act like you can't even grow plants, but realize 20, 30 years ago, T8 was the cutting edge technology. And we grew a lot of plants under T8s back then. That being said, if you were to walk into my store right now, most of my plants are used to much higher lighting just because I'm running LED. But what you can do is you can take a lot of these plants, take them back to your house. They're under a T8. They're going to melt back and go, oh my God, there's not enough light. But then they're going to come out with different structured leaves that usually are a little bigger and wider to catch that light. But to answer the question of what are some interesting plants in a T8 lit tank on a 20-gallon, which would be kind of low light, some easy ones I found, Pogo stem and Stellatus octopus, also known as the octopus plant. That was one of the new ones I just put on my website, and it fills in really well, and it gets long tendrils to it, and it's pretty interesting, and one of my most sold plants just by people walking into the store. They go, hey, that looks cool. I need some of that. And then what else would Wisteria can grow under really low light, and it's got a unique leaf texture to it, which will be nice and different from the Anubias and Java ferns you already have. And then I would say things like the dwarf aquarium lily, very easy to grow, and a Pontigeton crispus. And the dwarf aquarium lily will bring some reds in, which with lower light is really hard to get that red and bronze color. And then for the crispus, it grows really long leaves that are all crinkly and super easy to grow even under low light. That's like my favorite. Oh, you have a betta with no light? Put in this a Pontigeton crispus. You'll love it. So can't fail, really.
There you go. Somebody said you guys are the best on YouTube.
I always say thank you for that. I don't know that I always agree because it's hard to love yourself because there's lots of other channels that I nerd out on, and you always go, well, I'm not the best. This guy's amazing. And you're always aspiring to be better and go, oh, that guy's doing this really well and that guy's doing that really well. But I'm always flattered and say thank you. I do believe I'm trying very hard. I think John is as well. And every day I think we try to be better than yesterday. You know, it's the treadmill that never ends.
It's very true. I mean, it is a little bit far-fetched. I mean, but it definitely, it means a lot. I mean, that, you know, get old, and that never gets old hearing that, especially after the last couple of weeks for me. Anyway, you're the good guy, so it's not a problem for you. Somebody said, speaking of Mbunas, Pseudotropheus, demasoni, you guys wanted a topic you could argue over. Is there anything that we would have to argue over when it comes to demasoni?
I don't know. I haven't heard your opinions yet, but I mean, I know it's one of the first Africans I ever kept, and I love that fish. And just like you, I've been out to Leif's farm, so I'm well educated in demasoni.
Yeah, I don't know what we would argue with there because I love them too. I mean, I always have loved them. Maybe he's referring to the way the name is pronounced.
Could be that, or we did disagree on putting one in a 10-gallon tank last time, I think, and I still maintain it can be done because I knew that kid's situation of he could only have a 10-gallon tank. Could it be done? And I had been talking to him weeks prior of different fish and stuff like that. You know, but I think it just lands in the argument of like more water is always better for every fish, right? You know, and I think for sure you can't do 2 or 3 or 12 or any number besides one in that 10-gallon. I think it's a train wreck any number one besides one, but one can be done just like a betta in 1 gallon can be done. Do I think 5 gallons or 10 gallons is better? Yes, but if you put me in a box and say, here's the constraints, could this physically be done? I will answer it in an analytical way and say, technically, it could be done, yes. Because the question wasn't, do you think I should do it? The question is, can it be done?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what he was referring to, I'm not going to have the same argument again because it wasn't even necessarily an argument. It was
right. You didn't have all the info, and you hadn't been already having dialogue, and so when you answered the question, it was actually a different question than I had been asked, but I knew I had more information, and so that's why my answer was different.
Right. A couple more here. I said that a little while ago, but do you guys think older tanks were built to last longer? I have a 25-year-old Aquarium 125, and it's still perfect, and the glass is 1/2 inch. You don't see that these days. I've got some older tanks too that hold water just fine. I think that tank there, I think it's about 15 years old. I bought it used. No, it's 17 years old because I bought that tank 7 years ago from a guy and he had it 10 years. I think everything, whether it's automobiles, well, maybe not automobiles because technology has come so far, but stuff like furniture and homes and clothes, almost everything was made better, made with better craftsmanship and more pride and better materials and all of that long ago than it is now. But you know, aquariums, it's silicone and it's glass. I don't know that there's been a whole lot of innovation when it comes to that, other than tempered glass, which I don't know how new that is either. I don't necessarily think they are made better now than they were. Equipment certainly is, but as far as tanks go, I don't think so.
I mean, there's certain things like we have the technology to, for instance, put a hole in an aquarium using laser guided water, for instance, which we wouldn't have had that 40 years ago. But in general, I think, you know, when he's talking about his tank is thicker glass was cheaper. And I think this goes to any industry, whether we're talking about candy bars or glass tanks or whatever. Every year, minimum wage goes up, cost of living goes up, all these things go up. And there's two ways to combat that as a business. You raise the price of a product, or you bring the quality or size down. And so one way to do it might be, well, if we make this glass from 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch and temper it, that might save us production money and thus becomes the same price to the customer. That being said, there's things that have hardly ever changed. Like a neon tetra has been somewhere between, let's say, $1 and $3 for the past 40 years, pretty much. Like, while a gallon of milk or a gallon of gas in the past 40 years might have quadrupled in price. So there's lots of things that the quality hasn't necessarily gone down and the price hasn't changed. But at the same time, I don't think glass tanks are necessarily worse, but they've gotten cheaper made. So like I see it most in acrylic tanks. In my opinion, a lot of, let's say, Tenacore and stuff like that, they're using too thin of material where stuff is bowing. It's not going to rupture, but we've got that deflection we probably wouldn't have had years ago. But the cost of oil and shipping and people's time to make it has gone up. And so rather than going, well, the tank's now 30% more expensive, they raise it by 5% and then lower the thickness of the material.
Very good. I mean, I would have just said no. but that's why I have you on here, because you are so smart. So I'm going to answer one more question that was directed towards me, and then we're going to wind things down because somebody asked how the discus are doing that are right there. I did update everybody in the beginning, but I realized we've got 190 people in here now, and we had like 40 then. So the discus are doing fine. The one with the infected eyes, his eyes are still infected, but he's eating, he's swimming around. You know, he's doing okay. I don't know what's going to happen there. Have not had very good success with that kind of an issue when it comes to discus. So I've got my fingers crossed there. We'll see what happens. But all of the other fish are doing really fine. You know, they're happy in there. The plants, I'm going to work with this guy here and hopefully we can save them, because it's just a huge disaster. And it's, you know, it's that glass box right there. It's the fault of that, that the whole thing is in the condition that it's in. I mean, I'm not going to go through all that again. Look for the videos on that, and we'll definitely talk about it a whole lot more. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and do a selfish plug. If you haven't heard yet, we are selling our own premium cichlid pellets, KGTropicals.com. Go over there, check it out. Got available right now. You order tonight, I'll ship them out tomorrow morning. They'll get to you, well, probably Monday. So definitely excited to announce that. I'm not going to talk about it constantly. I mean, I told Corey before this video, before we started this broadcast, I said, look, I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about my product. I mean, would I love to? Sure, but I don't want to overwhelm everybody with advertising my stuff. I'm just going to let it grow organically, and if 1 million people buy it, great. If not, then, you know, hey, we gave it a shot. It's a good product, so it's not the product's fault. It's just going to be, you know, people decided not to buy it, so it is what it is. But I've had a lot of fun with this one, Corey. We had no plan whatsoever. We made the plan 5 seconds before we started the broadcast, and I still think it was a lot of fun. I mean, you and I were very similar, yet we also look at things very different, and I think that's fun. I think it brings I don't know, bring some enthusiasm to.
I love last minute. If I plan something, I end up, as you see, every question I've answered, it's super analytical and I go into too much detail. And if you bring that topic up, beforehand, my mind starts going, okay, how am I going to present this in the best manner? But if you just spring it on me right there, it's like, it's actually easier for me just to go, oh, let me just say what I know, as opposed to what's the best way to present this. So I enjoy the last minute thing.
It's fun, and I've been having so much fun. Even the one live stream that I completely blew up and made disastrous. This format, this kind of thing, is a lot of fun for me, especially since you gave me the idea of getting some help from some people, some very gracious, very unbelievably gracious people with their time to help me to weed out through some of the questions. Not that every question isn't important, but giving me the questions that kind of stand out from the others. I appreciate that very much. I always like to make sure I thank everybody when I do these videos, because if it wasn't for them, I would be scrambling through looking for comments and questions to answer, and then that can be pretty difficult. So I enjoy the format, though. It's fun, and it's been fun doing it with you. Gonna have to take a break from you for a couple of weeks, though, because I've got a new guest coming on next week, Steve Poland from Steve Poland's channel. If you're not familiar with him, you should be. We're going to talk all about African cichlids. And then the next week, we're going to continue that conversation with IFG. Everybody knows who IFG is. There's 188 people in here watching right now. Even though we're kind of signing off, people are still sticking around. So I expect y'all to watch those next 2 weeks, especially since I know so many of my people are African cichlid people. We're going to talk African cichlids for 2 weeks straight. It's going to be a lot of fun with those guys. Maybe Corey will talk about next time. I had a guest lined up. Well, I had kind of penciled in for today, and then just kind of disappeared. So we won't talk about that. But maybe the week after IFG, we'll have you back on, because this is fun. We have a good time together.
Yeah, I can talk cichlids, and I can hang on most topics, and I just happen to love African cichlids, even though I don't focus my channel on it. I do love them, and they're sneaking more and more into my fish room. It's like a plague. I got to fight it.
Once they get in your blood, man, you just can't get rid of them. I mean, they're just there, and they take over your whole life, and next thing you know, you're this guy right here. So
I do have one thing I can mention. A lot of people, if your question didn't get answered, what you can do, I started this new email address, and I think, and I'm not certain yet, I might back down to one live stream a week and try and do what John has done before, because I saw him do it, and I think it's a good idea. It's kind of the Q&A videos. And so I created an email address called ask@aquariumcoop.com. If you send a question, don't send me like, my fish is about to die, what should I do? Because I will not get to it that quick. But if you said like, what do I think about this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort all of these questions in this email by what the content is. Like, oh, it's a plant question, African cichlid question, tank building question. And then when I get enough questions to do an episode, I'm going to do those questions in a format like that. And what that's going to do is, like, for instance, I'm going to the Chicago Aquatic Experience in November. Well, while I'm there, I won't be able to do I won't say I won't, but probably won't be able to do a live stream on Sunday because I'll be sitting on a plane flying home. That would be the perfect time for that Q&A video to come out and replace the live stream I'll have to miss. So I'm stealing that idea from John because I think it's a good one. And I'll do it until maybe I get bored of it or something like that. But a lot of people here had asked questions, and we didn't get to them all. If you wanted to ask them at that email address, I'll try to address them in a future video.
I think I did like 35 of those, and they're fun. I mean, the Q&A videos are fun, and they seem to do well. People seem to enjoy them, but it does, kind of run its course like everything does. I mean, you do everything for a certain amount of time, and it gets to the point where people aren't interested as much anymore and stuff like that. And you're just like, okay, well, let's move on to something else. I've done the comment of the week thing. I did the Q&A. I've done a lot of those things, and it's fun to do those things. Maybe I'll do the same thing again someday. It's like one of those things where when you're desperate for content, it's very nice to be able to turn to that email address and say, there's all the content I'll ever need. But for me, after 30 episodes or so, I started finding myself answering questions in videos for the third and fourth time. It's like, okay, I'm basically making the same video over and over again. So at least you've got 35 or so videos that you can do. And who knows, you know, your following now is a little bigger than mine was when I was doing my Q&A videos. So you might get a lot more questions than I do, and people like you more than they like me. So maybe you'll get a lot of questions and you'll have unlimited content for those. They're a lot of fun. I enjoy them. Sometimes you got to have fun with some of them too. Don't forget that. You don't have to be serious all the time. Have fun with them sometimes. Pick on people a little bit because, you know, you just got to be a human being. So
Sure.
But I've had fun. I'm going to do what I've done on every single live stream that I've had a guest on. Even though, you know, you're a huge channel and all of that, I'm still going to do it because if I do it, I'll go all night long and we'll never end this thing. I'm going to let you go ahead and close things out for us.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you share this video, especially if you have like a local hobby club, or let's say you're part of a smaller Facebook group and stuff like that. Like probably this has already been shared on the Tank Talk group, obviously. And, you know, a lot of times I'm the only one that shares on Reddit, but I hadn't shared it on Reddit or anything like that. You know, grow the community as a whole because we all just want to help each other. You know, like it, leave comments in the comment section after this video uploads. At least I know I follow those comments for at least a few days. I'll answer questions. I like to see feedback on what we thought was good, what was bad, that type of thing. You know, check out our videos. I'm doing videos basically 4 days a week. John's doing it, you know, between Facebook and live stream here and videos, maybe 3 or 4 a week. So there's plenty of content. You know, watch what you like, share, help us promote. And in general, I had a great time. I know John enjoys it, otherwise he wouldn't be doing it. And I wouldn't come onto the show last minute if I didn't enjoy it. So we thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you at least here. I won't see you because I won't be on the screen, but I'll probably be in the chat watching for when Steve Poland's on for African Cichlids next week. I know I'll be tuning in for that. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.